overwhelming passage of the 9/11 Victims Compensation Fund was one of the battles that Congressman Peter King was right in the middle of. He joins us in studio after a very successful stint as guest host of the Joe Piscopo Morning Show here in New York City. Listen, if politics doesn't work out, you might have a future in radio, Congressman.
Well, if I can put up with the Piscopo people, I can do anything. You know, actually, Joe's a great guy. The show is great, and I enjoy doing it, and I'm glad you asked me to come on for a few minutes.
You used to do that for the great John Gambling, too.
So boy, there was a legend. Is a legend.
He is indeed. And Joe is emerging as a great talk show host in his own right. But it was great listening to you this morning, and we thought we'd kind of grab you on your way home or your way to the office. Let's talk a little bit about the time we're living in. You and I were just talking on the break about the polarizing atmosphere of America right now, the sort of the weary kind of back and forth and the media meltdown every single day. Last couple of days, this New York Times debacle. Do you worry that hurts the Republican Party coming up in 2020 in terms of the weariness factor, the wearing down, the constant battles, or do you think people are being motivated to get out and vote?
It really depends on how we handle it. People may look at it and say, all this aggravation going on, maybe if we just put President Trump aside, it'll calm down. That's what we have to worry about. The people somehow think if President Trump is not there, everything is going to calm down. On the other hand, where it can work to our advantage is to show here's a person who was duly elected as President of the United States, and from the minute he was elected, not just sworn in, from the minute he was elected, they had riots in the street. You had people saying he was a Russian agent. They've gone after his children, his family, his tax returns, his businesses. They go after his nominees, his appointees, like, for instance, Justice Kavanaugh. Now they've resurrected the whole issue of sex abuse by him, and as there was then, there is now no evidence whatsoever, yet it's out there. So I think it's our obligation as Republicans not to feel sorry for ourselves, but to let people know this is what President Trump is up against. It's not, listen, he's no angel and he loves the fight, but the fact is that this was begun by the other side. They went after him, and he is, I think, congenitally incapable of not punching back. But the fact is, the punches are coming, like with this thing with Brett Kavanaugh. I mean, obviously the president's on a tear right now, but who started it? I mean, this is and he sees an honorable man who I've had the pleasure of meeting, both him and his wife, Justice Kavanaugh, and to see him being attacked like this and slandered and maligned with no corroborating evidence. And as you said, they sort of leave out a key aspect of the person who he supposedly abused doesn't even remember it happening.
No.
So, I mean, to go with a story like that, you wouldn't have had scandal rags wouldn't have gone with that in the past, never mind the New York Times.
And as Rich Lowry points out in a column I read in the New York Post, this is a shot across the bow. They're warning potential nominees on the bench. There may be warning Kavanaugh. If you even think about going down the road of eroding or overturning Roe v. Wade, you better play ball the way we want you to play ball, or we're coming at you.
Yeah, this is definitely a scorched earth policy, and it is a warning. It's out there, and let's face it, we're human beings. To say that anyone is going to have a perfect past, that if they go into every section of your life, they can't find one item, which maybe not even that important, but the media will blow it up and make that's what your life has been all about. It's a tough thing. And
let me ask you a question. You've been at this a long time, and you are deeply admired and respected. Your tenure has been much appreciated. Do you worry about people having no interest in public service or ever running for anything when you consider the scrutiny that so many elected officials are going through right now?
Yes, we see it, and we try to recruit candidates. You have somebody who's worked hard, he or she, to work up a business or to get themselves established, and now they're at a stage in life where they could run for Congress. They don't want to risk all that, to have all that coming out, everything, every enemy they ever made, anything that's ever gone the wrong way. And especially people who come from, let's say, tough upbringings.
Yeah.
They may not have the perfect family. Things may have gone wrong in their life, but they've overcome that. Well, now all that's going to be brought back and brought out there. So, no, it's definitely damaging, and because all sense of perspective is gone.
How do you feel, let's take a moment and look at domestic policy, foreign policy. With the 3 years of this Trump administration, you have a guy who seems to be willing to try to rattle cages. Let's talk to North Korea. Let's talk to our enemies. He's been widely criticized for even having a conversation with Putin and some of our adversaries. Can you look at both sides, domestic and foreign policy wise? How is this Republican president stacking up against other presidents that we have witnessed in our lifetime?
I think he's doing an excellent job. First of all, he has broken the ISIS caliphate, and we now almost take that for granted, but that is a big deal. ISIS was running rampant through the Middle East, and they had, I think, an area bigger than Connecticut. And now it's still potent, but it's no longer this united force they were. Number two, take my own district. This is the president's tough on crime stand. MS-13 had killed 25 people, and I mean brutal slaughters, cutting people to pieces between October of 2015 and April of 2017. That was, 18 months.
Right.
25 murders in 18 months. Since the president got involved, there has not been one. And he told the FBI, he told Homeland Security, and he supported the local police, do what you have to do to get this done. Of course, the local media said he was encouraging police brutality, he was encouraging profiling and everything else. Well, the fact is there are a lot of people alive today, mostly young people, because of what he's done to clamp down on MS-13.
Let's go back. I want to ask you about domestic policy, law enforcement. Last night, we lost another police officer in the line of duty, this time in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Here in New York, there's a lot of cops who tell me they're worried about the way they've been handcuffed by policies. They're not allowed to stop and frisk. They're not allowed to. I mean, every cop in America now has a camera in their face when they're trying to effect an arrest. I think no more so than New York City. Do you worry about a lack of respect for law enforcement? Do you agree with me that it feels like our police officers are under siege?
Oh, they are under siege, and it was bad enough, but it's gotten worse in the last year or so. When you see, and my father was an NYPD officer, so I have a certain bias there, but to see people throwing water bottles at cops and buckets and spitting on them and throwing Chinese food at them, and somehow this is just considered part of life today. It shouldn't be. And what was done, like in the Pantaleo case, what was done out in Ferguson, Missouri, I mean, these are cops doing their job, and they end up having to pay the price for it. And the media immediately sides with the person who claims to have been the victim. They forget the fact that there was over 2,000 murders a year in New York before. Right. You had Giuliani and Bloomberg and come in, and now it's down to around 200 or so. It's about 80-90% drop. Well, most of those people whose lives are saved are from the minority community.
Right,
so there's thousands of young minorities alive today because of the cops, but yet someone like Colin Kaepernick becomes a hero, and people are allowed to throw water bottles at cops. It's terrible.
I'm always intrigued at your view. I always warn everybody. I understand Pete King is a New Yorker through and through. So issues like, I remember when you went after Ted Cruz, and I was like, oh, come on, leave it. I mean, but he went after New York, and so you were defending New York. The Second Amendment. New Yorkers have a bit of a different take, I think, on the Second Amendment than much of the rest of the country. But when you hear stuff like this...
Hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15, your AK-47. We're not going to allow it to be used.
When the Democrats just openly say, some of them, Beto O'Rourke, we're going to come take your guns. I mean, that's not a winning message. What's your perspective as a New Yorker who I know does respect the Second Amendment, but understands that the Democrats are saying all bets are off with gun control?
Yeah, I do believe in the Second Amendment that we can have background checks. I think they do come within the Second Amendment. Even with assault weapons, I don't think they should be available. Having said that, to say you're going to have the federal government go into people's homes and take away their guns, I mean, that's police state tactics.
Right.
And I think even Democrats who believe that don't want to say it.
Right.
The fact that O'Rourke said it, you're seeing more pushback now from other Democrats. No, you have to. Listen, New York is different. I grew up in a place where people basically don't have guns.
Right.
You go upstate New York, you go down south. I mean, it's much part of the culture.
Sure.
So we have to try to appreciate that and respect it and try to work within that framework. But people who just disregard and laugh at that and somehow say that the guy who has a AR-15 in Mississippi, the federal government has the right to go in and take away his gun, that shows a lack of respect for the Constitution.
Congressman Pete King, you've already had a long day, and I'm sure it's going to continue. And listen, after your job this morning, I'm looking over my shoulder. I hope you don't want this shift.
Mike, you have nothing to worry about. Believe me, you don't.
Great job today and this morning, and thanks for stopping by and
Appreciate
visiting
it, Mike.
with this
Thank
person.
you.
We appreciate you fighting the good fight.
Right,
Congressman Pete King in studio with us here on the Mike Gallagher Show in the ReliefFactor.com studios. We mentioned universal background checks. We're going to dive into that next. I think we got to tackle the elephant in the room. That's next here in the ReliefFactor.com studios.